Young children just seem to magically absorb language naturally, while adults often struggle with learning new languages. And then we hear the golden window of language learning supposedly takes place between the ages of 0 and 7. In fact, we see this presented in mainstream science all the time.
Berg said the critical period was age 2 to 13. That's around the age you reach
The
puberty.
earlier the better when it comes to learning a second language.
The growth in the part of the brain responsible for language peaks between birth and age 3. During this critical...
Children are just naturally gifted at learning languages. Except this is Benny Lewis.
When I was 21 years old, I could only speak English, which is typical for those of us from English-speaking countries. And I had many reasons why this was going to be the case for me for the rest of my life.
He learned how to speak 8 languages, and he didn't grow up with any other language than English. Benny runs a vlog and sells an online course where he claims that you can learn to be fluent in a language in 3 months or less. True or bull? Okay, so if all the scientists are telling us that children are just more naturally gifted at learning languages, that means that adults must not be, right? Well, what's Benny doing at 21 that you aren't? And is it possible for adults to copy the way children learn a language? A human baby is born with around 10 billion brain cells. As the brain is developing, there are special times when the brain learns things more effectively as it observes the world and tries to understand it. For example, from 0 to 6 months, we have a special window in which we recognize the sounds of language in our native environment. In English, we begin to hear the difference in sound between P, pig, and B, big, or R, rock, and L, lock. Here's an example of a Caucasian mother speaking to her child. You can hear the sounds that she is making.
I love your big blue eyes. So pretty and nice.
There are R's and L's present. Now pay attention to the Japanese mother speaking to her child.
大きな茶色いお目目。そして綺麗な黒い髪。
The sounds of R and L are omitted, and therefore the child will not be able to discern between the differences of the R and the L sound. The synapses are stimulated, and it becomes stronger each time that we are reinforcing this language. After the 6-month mark, the baby's brain then begins to aggressively trim away the sounds that won't be necessary for its communication in its environment. The brain is essentially trying to become more efficient in its processes, keeping what is used and building upon that, getting rid of the parts that are no longer being used regularly. We continually do this for most of our lives, trimming the parts we don't need and keeping the parts that we do. But how did our boy Ben overcome the early development window?
I moved to Spain, and I figured this is it. This is going to solve my problems, living in the country. No. 6 months later of living in Spain, couldn't speak any Spanish.
Turns out, it's a little more complicated than just that. Researchers did a study with American and Japanese babies out in Seattle. In this experiment, the researchers wanted to find out if there was a difference between a human teaching a baby language versus that of a television set.
发生了什么事情哦？小小熊七七在这里，一个绿色的圈圈，绿色的圈圈，绿色的圈圈，再转一下，转一圈，嘿，一圈，再一次哦，转一二。
They then ran the same experiment with the baby being taught by a television set.
And the video result, no learning whatsoever. It takes a human being for babies to take their statistics.
We need social interaction in order to quickly acquire a language. You need to have context, social cues. You need to have a purpose to communicate. Benny engaged with the locals and used the language that he knew to create simple messages. Turns out that this is an excellent way to learn. relevant, real-world consequences in getting a message across. Now, it's not to say that listening to another language and role-playing doesn't help. It does. However, the use of that language in context is far more effective. So it turns out that when a baby begins to babble at around the age of 6 to 9 months, the baby is ready to practice speaking. This was you. But what were you trying to say? Take a look at this clip.
Did you understand it though? No. Okay. Alright. Huh? Oh, no. Not this one. This is the grand finale of it. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're going to do next season because they did some stuff this time.
The babies and toddlers have been absorbing sounds, tones, rhythm, prosody patterns, and eventually will try to imitate them.
Right. Don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. Yeah.
Infants are listening for the first 6 months to a year of their life before they start to produce language at all. And usually not even language, but just babble. By 1 year and 2 months, the child can group and categorize words into nouns and verbs. By 18 months, the child can say simple phrases like dog, sleepy, or kitty, hungry. This is also known as telegraphic speech. And by 2 years old, the baby can speak with reference to the past, present, and future, and also understands singular and plural in grammar. From here until the age of 5, they really begin to practice and strengthen their grammar naturally. The child was never taught formal grammar. Take a look at these books. Do they look familiar to you? They were the bane of many children's existence in high school. And if you flip through some of them, you can look at these exercises. And you might see something like this. Do you remember conjugating verbs? Doing grammar practices? Maybe 20 minutes of speaking practice in class? That's not how babies pick up a language. In fact, when it comes to vocabulary, between the ages of 0 and 7, a child will pick up between 3,000 to 5,000 words a year on average. A 7-year-old will have over 20,000 words at their disposal. And meanwhile, here you are, memorizing these lists. So, do children naturally have an advantage when it comes to learning a language? I think you already know the answer. Yes, they do. They have their first 7 years in which they just listen, observe everything in context, and they're constantly practicing in their native environment with zero fear. Nobody grades them, nobody yells at them for making mistakes. They've got parents who are obligated to listen, love them, and are trying to respond to what they're saying. However, can we mimic the conditions that a child naturally is exposed to? Absolutely. Let's take a look again at what Benny did. He immerses himself in the language. He can hear the target language being spoken in context and is both active and passive in his interactions. He engages with the locals, he's using the bits of language he's learned, and he gets real-time feedback. He's making mistakes, learning from them, and adding to his vocabulary at the same time. And he says it best here.
And perfectionism is a really bad thing in language learning because a language is a means of communication. It's a way to get to know new people and new cultures. And when you embrace this, it's okay to make mistakes. And I actually have a goal to make at least 200 mistakes a day because then I know I'm getting somewhere, I'm using the language. So embarrass yourself. Go out there, talk to people. It's okay. When do you think I was learning a language better? Here or here?
If learning a second language or acquiring one is what you want, get the right environment, put in the effort, use good methods, and have fun with it. You never know what amazing experiences are just around the corner.